In the early 2000s, Nokia sold 4 out of every 10 phones on Earth. Their ringtone was the soundtrack of a generation. Their phones were in billions of pockets, and their brand was so dominant that people thought it could never fall. But just a decade later, Nokia's empire had crumbled. This is the story of how a Finnish paper mill became the world's biggest phone maker, and how the giant of mobile phones slept through the future. Nokia's story didn't begin with technology at all. In 1865, a Finnish engineer named Fredrik Idestam opened a paper mill by the Nokian Virch River. Over time, the company expanded into rubber boots, cables, tires, even televisions. By the mid-20th century, Nokia was a sprawling conglomerate, messy but adaptable. And that adaptability set the stage for its boldest transformation: telecommunications. In the 1980s, mobile phones were bulky bricks reserved for the wealthy, but Nokia saw an opportunity and invested heavily in cellular networks and handset technology. By the 1990s, their gamble paid off. Phones like the Nokia 2110 popularized the idea of a phone as something everyone could carry. Then came the Nokia 3210, and later, the indestructible 3310. The 3310 wasn't just a gadget, it was a cultural phenomenon. It was affordable, nearly unbreakable, and its batteries seemed to last forever. And of course it came with Snake, the game that made millions of kids secretly hope for longer bus rides. By the early 2000s, Nokia dominated the market. At its peak, the company was selling more phones than Motorola, Samsung, and everyone else combined. 40% global market share. Its slogan, "Connecting People," wasn't just marketing, it was reality. And in Finland, Nokia wasn't just a business, it was a symbol. At one point, Nokia alone accounted for 4% of Finland's GDP. It was a source of national pride. But even the strongest empires have weak points. In January 2007, Steve Jobs walked on stage and unveiled the iPhone. It was sleek, it was futuristic. It wasn't just a phone, it was a computer in your pocket. Inside Nokia, the reaction was dismissive. Executives scoffed. They called it fragile, expensive, a toy. And in the short term, they weren't wrong. Early iPhones were costly and limited. But what Nokia failed to see was how quickly the world would shift. Consumers didn't just want durability, they wanted possibility. Apps, music, the internet, all in one device. Nokia's Achilles heel was its software. Their Symbian operating system was powerful but clunky. It was designed for buttons, not touchscreens. And inside Nokia, politics slowed everything down. Teams fought over whether to fix Symbian, adopt a Linux-based system, or start over completely. Instead of acting, Nokia froze. Meanwhile, Apple's iOS and Google's Android raced ahead. Developers rushed to build apps for their platforms. Consumers loved the simplicity. And in just a few years, smartphones weren't luxury items anymore. They were the new standard. Nokia tried to fight back. In 2011, the company struck a deal with Microsoft, betting on Windows Phone. But it was too late. Developers ignored Windows. Consumers ignored Nokia, and their once legendary brand started to feel outdated. By 2013, Nokia sold its phone division to Microsoft for just over $7 billion. A company that had once dominated global communications, that had defined the very idea of mobile, was suddenly irrelevant. Nokia's downfall wasn't caused by one bad phone. It wasn't even one bad decision. It was fear of change. They had the engineers, they had the patents, they had the money. What they lacked was the courage to disrupt themselves. Apple killed the iPod with the iPhone. Netflix killed its DVD business with streaming. Nokia could have made the leap too, but instead, they clung to what had worked in the past. And in business, comfort is deadly. Nokia slept through the smartphone revolution, But they weren't the only billion-dollar dream that collapsed almost overnight. Next, we'll look at WeWork, a $47 billion empire built on hype, and how it all came crashing down. Now I want to hear from you. Which founder, company, or rise and fall story should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments, and it might just become the next episode of The Founder Files.